I am the closing paragraph for the lightning talks that you just had. So what I'm going to do is kind of pull those three things together, talking about network effects, brand, and like your unique technology. And I'm going to do it talking about the story of Pinterest, or basically, I say kind of figuring it out as you go. But how Pinterest went from a site called Pinboard, which was the original name for Pinterest, with probably about dozens of users, that's my best guess, to the global brand that we have now with 150 million users. It's far more than any website, and it definitely has a better name than Pinboard. And like the goal is actually talking about those three things and how product strategy brings it all together. And I already did that. Okay, so Pinterest, how did it start? Ben and Evan were both collectors, and they wanted to create something that was very simple for them, which was an online tool to basically house their collections. And they took inspiration from the offline pinboard. They thought that a pinboard was something that could absorb many different types of objects. You could put a photo, a dried flower, your favorite CD, whatever it ended up being. But it was also really visual. You could look at someone's pinboard and really know the person behind the pinboard. And so they loved that, and they wanted to recreate that online. And so they started a website. They called it Pinboard. And they started with this first iteration of having that type of visual grid. Pinterest is so well known now for the grid, but actually it was something that they went through about 50 iterations of the grid before they got to the version that they wanted. But the idea was always the same thing, which was just having a place where you have your own pinboard, and you can put your objects on it from all over the web, and some other people could look at it. They started to have the concept of following, but really it was just about me pinning something to my own boards. And they had a bit of a discovery, a surprise, which was that when you have something that's really visual, it's easy to browse, and you have people organizing things themselves into collections, what actually happens is that you have a discovery experience that comes out of it. So you look at someone else's board, whether it's for Ben, it was probably his favorite insects or kitchen supplies. And then you see, in the kitchen supplies, oh, I need a better ice cream scooper, or whatever it ends up being. And you discover it through his board. And so they oriented more towards this idea of discovering, and they actually thought that the network effect on Pinterest would be the fact that we were all following each other. And maybe we would have influencers, and maybe we would have people that, I really love someone's taste in wine, and so I would follow that person's board. But they still thought of Pinterest as this place to store the things for themselves, so this catalog of things that you love. And it struck a chord, as you guys all know. It went from, I was lucky enough to invest a little bit before this when it was about 30,000 users. And then over the next year, it kind of just took off. And what ended up happening is that they had to spend almost all their engineering time just keeping the site up. There were many black days, not quite as bad as Twitter at that time, but it was not easy. And we ended up kind of picking the low-hanging fruit, fixing the things that really needed to be fixed. Search had to actually return pins when you did a search. We wanted to create private pins so people could pin privately. But then there was this question of well, what's next? For any company, I'm sure you guys all experience this, there's always so many things that you could actually build, right? I'm sure anybody can come up with a list of 30 things right now for a new feature that they want to build. And we knew we had to figure out what was next, but we really weren't sure what we were optimizing for. We were tracking all these metrics. It was terrible in stats counters. I don't know if any of you guys have to use those, but we were tracking all these things and we didn't really know what we were optimizing for. And so kind of touching on what Ariel talked about, we really needed to find our purpose. We had to figure out, now that we got a little big on something, where do we go from there? And how do we know, once we know what we're supposed to be, then we can prioritize what we actually want to build. And so we turned to our users. We did a massive, this is when we were about 50 people, just to give some sense of context. We did a massive user research study. We actually ended up hiring a third party called the Luntz Group, which was, some of you may know from the political world, is like this polling group. But they did an amazing job. Like what we did is we ended up bringing dozens and dozens of users together from across the spectrum of people who were pinaholics, like obsessed, like addicted to pinning, all the way to people who had never pinned before and were just going to try Pinterest for the first time. And what we were trying to get to is like, what is it about Pinterest that they love so much or that resonates with them? And what we ended up getting was this battle cry, which was that people wanted something that was going to make their real life better. They wanted something that would inspire them to do things in their life. They wanted something that wasn't just going to waste their time online. Like you have to remember, this was during a time when Facebook was huge and Twitter was huge, and people were just feeling like they were spending all their time online, and they actually wanted something that would connect them to their offline world. And so what we realized was that users didn't want another social network. We weren't about connecting you with other followers or following your friends or any of that stuff, that we had to figure out how to make people's offline worlds better. And of course, like for any of you who know Pinterest, that's probably pretty obvious, but it's one of those things that sometimes like you just get lost in everything. You get lost in all the pins. But when you look at the most popular categories on Pinterest, they're all things that you do in your life. It's not humor pins, it's not like looking at beautiful travel inspiration pins. It's finding the pancake recipe you want to cook on a Saturday with your kids. It's finding the haircut that you want to get when you go to the salon, or how you can actually pair like the suede shoes with your different colored jeans, whatever it ends up being, or dreaming about the wedding that you're going to have. And so we realized that what we were was we were in the inspiration business. We weren't about any feature. We weren't about whether we were a website or a mobile app. We were there to inspire our users to live these fuller lives. And so I grabbed Ariel's positioning framework just to kind of fulfill my duty as a closing paragraph. And when you think about Pinterest, like what are we? We're for people who want to live fuller lives, people who want to do all these things in their lives, cook, travel, do a project with their kid, host an event. And so we're a tool that inspires you to make your offline life better. We are not a social network, which was like revolutionary at the time, to not be a social network. Everybody wanted to be a social network. And Instagram was growing like crazy, and we had to realize that that's not who we were. And so we changed our mission. We changed the way that we describe Pinterest to our users. And we went from being a catalog of all the things that you love to being a place to discover the things that you love, and then inspire you to do those things in your life. This is pretty transformational change for the company. And it really, I think it was like a pivotal moment where we stopped being about just pinning, and we started being about a discovery experience and really fully embracing the fact that we were a discovery experience. And so we figured out our brand. We were in the inspiration business. Pinterest was an inspirational place for our users to inspire them to do things in their lives. And now we had to figure out how to support that brand with features. What's our product strategy going to be? And how does it actually bridge to our network effect or our unique technology? And so we shifted, or really we created our product strategy, which was that we realized that we had to do two things, which is number one, we had to show people the pins they want to see. That's how they're going to discover things on Pinterest. And number two, we have to make sure that those pins are useful. I don't know, how many of you are Pinterest users? Okay, I'm happy with that ratio. I don't know if any of you have had this experience. It used to kill me when you see a recipe you want to cook, you click through and it lands on a Tumblr page. Like when that happens, we failed you. Like that is one of the things that we worked really hard all the time to try to prevent, but we realized that the more that happens, the less we're able to achieve our brand, so we have to make sure that pins are useful. And we also focused on a single metric, which was weekly active pinners. And the idea there was, if we do our job well, if we help people discover things, those pins are useful and they actually want to keep them for later, then we'll know we're doing our job when people save those pins. And so we made it one metric that we were all focused on, and if we grew the number of people pinning, then we were on the right track. And so we actually organized the company for the first time into 3 strategic pillars: discover, save, and do. Discover was a team I was responsible for. We were helping people discover pins. Save was just making sure that the process of pinning would always be like as easy as possible, whether on Pinterest or off Pinterest. And then do was about making pins useful. And so with this discovery, I decided that our mission was going to be about making it effortless to discover the things you love. So touching on a little bit of the common thread between Todd and my presentation, ultimately you want to make it so that when a user comes to the site, they don't feel like it's work to get to the answer they're looking for. Oops. And we realized that what we had, the network effect that we had, wasn't about following users. It was actually about our pinners creating this graph for us. They were going out all over the web, and they were picking the things that they thought were worth saving for later, basically curating the entire web. Google has to have thousands of servers are going out, crawling the web, bringing it, ranking everything, and we just had people going out there, pulling the content into Pinterest, putting it on boards for us, so creating edges in our graph for all the, if I have a favorite book, a favorite board about books, and I have all my books on that board, then I'm creating connections between those books that only a human can create. And then if other people find those pins on Pinterest and they put them on their own book board, then what you end up having is this very dense graph of all the objects that anybody has ever pinned to Pinterest. And the more that they pin, the better the discovery experience gets on Pinterest, which creates that wonderful virtuous loop and makes the experience better and better the more people use the product. And the second thing that we realized was that we were uniquely positioned to create this discovery experience because we had this wonderful new human-created data set. And when you overlay a new cutting-edge technology on top of a new data set, what you're able to achieve is a step function change in the precision that technology can achieve by itself. So a great example of this was actually PageRank for Google. So they had obviously cutting-edge technology going out early on, crawling the web, finding all the web pages, indexing, ranking it. But then they also leveraged backlinks in a way that no one else had to actually create a very high precision, high relevance experience in search, which is with so much of what was important about Google early on. And we were able to use the same thing for so many of the discovery experiences on Pinterest, whether it's the search experience or the related pins beneath the pin. I mean, again and again, this is the key to Pinterest, and it's that combination of both taking advantage of the network effect and then layering on some unique technology in order to create something that you just can't get anywhere else. There's a reason why Pinterest search is better than Google's image search. There's a reason why you can only find things on Pinterest that you couldn't find anywhere else on the web. And I think one of my favorite examples, it's partly the last feature I worked on at Pinterest, is this visual search experience. So I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with any computer vision or machine vision stuff, but it's all but impossible to take a photo of something in the real world, crop the object in that image, and then find that object. But we're able to create an incredibly high precision experience of doing just that on Pinterest. And I invite you, if none of you guys have used it, there's a little bit of a magnifying glass on the upper right-hand corner of any image. And we're able to do that not because our machine vision team is head over heels better than anybody else, although they probably are, but it's because we have this incredible data set, and we're able to combine the two of them to really then support our mission of helping people discover the things that they love and inspire them to do those things. And so, in closing, I think what really happened for us, everybody discovers their brand, their unique technology, their network effects, their product strategy in a different order. For us, it really came to understanding our brand first, and then the rest of it really did follow for us. And with discovery, it was this effortless discovery experience, and then the cutting edge tech, which was our human-created data set, and this network effect. And the one thing that I'll close on is that, ultimately you can say what your brand is on a slide, but you really have to work tirelessly every day to support that brand and your product with the features that you've built, the way that you communicate your brand to your users, with the copy, with everything that, like every blog post that you write about the product. And I was so thrilled to see that just a week ago, this group, last week, you saw this, produce a list of the top, I don't remember if it was 100 or 500 brands, according to US consumers. And I thought it was just great. Like we would always put up whenever we had a conversation about brand, we would say Apple, Nike, Pinterest. And so it was so cool to see this list and just show like how far the company has come in creating the brand. So that's it for me. You'll find the 5 of us in the back, I was told. Cheese time now. The wine part will come, I hope. But do you want to close?